Hi, we're out here at HP Discover and the beautiful Las Vegas. I'm here with Doug Brown, and I'm going to be able to interview Doug Brown for a change instead of him podcasting and usually interviewing us. Because Doug actually said something this morning that I definitely want to have him elaborate on and go into further detail. But first, if you will, give me an introduction.
My name is Doug Brown, and I run a website, a company called DABCC, and we've been doing virtualization, desktop application deployment type of technology since January of '99. So this year was our 15th birthday, believe it or not. Just makes me feel old, you know.
Wow.
What can I say? I'm a CTP, Citrix CTP, a VMware vExpert, and also a Microsoft MVP too. So just been doing it a long time.
So Doug, the question I wanted to make sure I got you on camera with was that statement that you made earlier this morning that said, why is it that you like the HDI versus the VDI?
To me, it's all about user experience. So as you know, and I also worked for Citrix for many years, and when I left Citrix, I actually wrote myself a personal paper. And what I was trying to do is sort of deprogram myself from Citrix and in the programming they give you, everything Citrix, and trying to figure out what I personally like. And so I wrote this paper, I called it The Reality of the Situation, and it was basically a thesis with little blurbs that said, okay, I worked for Citrix for X years, and in that time I logged into the MetaFrame farms 6 times. Why? And that's a very bold statement. Here's a guy that absolutely loves this technology, but I never logged into it, I never used it. Why? And it all came down to user experience. I wanted to be able to install applications. I wanted things faster. You know, I didn't want to wait. I wanted my data that was local to, you know, all these different things. And I wrote down each one of these things. So to me, VDI is great for certain types of users, right? Users that don't need that high level of user experience. But when you get into the more powerful, I wouldn't say call them power users, but when you get into guys that need a little bit more, the user experiences start lacking. And I also believe in benchmarks. You know, in IT, we all have personal benchmarks, right? You know, IOPS and, you know, you name it, right? The users have a benchmark too, and that is they have a computer at home. And when they go to work, they just expect their computer at work to work better than their computer at home, or at least equal. And when they log into something and it's not as good, or they don't have the same features, or they have to jump through hoops, then they start creating us versus them. It's like all these darn IT people, they don't know what they're doing and they get paid all this money, and my stuff, all I need to do is do my work. And then I have the last thing I think about with user experiences is how many people walked into a corporation this morning or woke up this morning and said, oh, I can't wait to use that new HP router, that new Moonshot box. Nobody, right? Nobody cares about that except for us. You know, all they say is, I need to do this PowerPoint. I need to make a spreadsheet. And they expect that to be fast. So the most important thing that we can do about IT, and what we're in business to do, is to facilitate them to do their jobs better, quicker, easier, right? So that they can sell more widgets or market the widget or whatever, right? And that's what we're here for. So to me, it's all about user experience. HDI brings phenomenal user experience.
So knowing, you know, where you're at in the market, and I know you're exposed to a lot of different articles and different information that's coming in, that you probably have plotted the trends of different technologies and movements. Where would you say that, because people right now are saying DAS is the next best thing, it's where it's supposed to be at. Everybody's wanting to move towards DAS because this VDI has gotten too expensive. Is HDI really going to change that particular endeavor?
Well, that's a very good question. You know, you definitely have the hype factor, right? And hype really bothers me personally because you get a lot of people jumping on board, and they do it for a lot of different reasons. One of the benefits of being me is that I do not work for a company. I am not selling a certain solution. What I'm trying to do is just solve people's problems. And I've always said I'm a consultant, or I think of myself as I'm a consultant. You know, when I go out to a customer and say, what's your problem? Let's solve that problem. So DAS, there's definitely a great use case for it. You know, that, for example, when I was doing a lot of consulting in SMB, and you walk into the law office with, you know, 10 lawyers, and they have the the HP server in the closet or in the back of the CEO's office. That's a great solution for DaaS, right? It's, they just throw the data up there, they can move everything up to the cloud, and it works really well, and it gives them an okay user experience. But as you move into the mid-sized businesses, to the enterprise, and or to somebody that really needs, again, that user experience. Maybe it's a small engineering firm. So if I don't want to exclude the SMB, maybe it's a small engineering firm that's doing a lot of CAD, but it's just a few guys, right? Well, HDI will allow them to do that because of the benefits that AMD is bringing with the APUs that have both a GPU and the processor built in, and with Zen Desktop and 3D Pro and things like that, where we can give them this. In fact, you can see it right. You can see it right over here. This is real, right? And we can give them that user experience. So there is a place for DaaS, but when you require that user experience, that's when HDI comes in play.
Great.
Do you agree with that?
I do. I totally. DaaS, in my opinion, has been one of the panaceas and nirvanas that people said, this isn't working as well, the cost is too much, I can't wait till they get it out there and make it as a service. But what we have been finding is large companies who are considering this, as a great example, we were able to show that a $13 million investment in the DaaS would wouldn't give you half as much as the $3 million investment into the HDI that you would have had over the same 3 years. But it's a huge delta in the money, right, by $10 million. But more to your point, it's a huge delta in the user experience, and that's the key to the productivity.
I'm glad you brought up price, because as an engineer, I've never thought price. I've always left that to the sales guy, right? They go out and do all that stuff. I'll come in and explain why this is better for them technically, why it's going to solve their problem, and why it's going to make their users more productive, right? That's my job, or I've always seen it. But one thing that I just flip out about with HDI and Moonshot specifically is the cost savings, is the total cost of ownership, the licensing benefits, things like that. It's just thoroughly phenomenal. And it's really, it's that next evolution, right? We're able to take, instead of scaling out and creating all these, pizza boxes here, or virtual, putting a bunch of people on virtualization, then oversubscribing, because that's what reality is, right? We're able to actually have something that's in a small form factor, but yet extremely powerful. What, you can fit 45 cartridges in a Moonshot box, a Moonshot box, and and then four guys through per cartridge. You guys do the math, and it's just phenomenal. And you can add an extra user if you so that user experience is not degraded by someone who says, well, we'll just throw another one on that box, right? Because that's reality. We can argue things, but we can't argue reality. And reality is what we face as engineers, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, one last question. I'm going to put you on the spot on this one. And what do you think VMware's response will be to the Moonshot device?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know if I think they'll probably have to jump on board with it. They'll have to make Horizon View, allow it to deal with physical type of devices, allow it to deal with Moonshot if they're going to have a real play. Now, it'll be interesting if they'll do that, because VMware is so vendor lock-in, right? They really want you to, VMware, and buy a bunch of storage, because EMC is VMware too, or VMware is EMC, right? So, that's my problem with VMware is that, and when I talk to a lot of VMware people, is they forget about solution providing, and they're really vendor pushing. And as an old consultant, that upsets me or rubs me the wrong way. And but they're going to have to jump on board this, because this is the future, and not just, of course, in HDI, but also in cloud infrastructure and just data center infrastructure in general, web servers, file server. I mean, just the Moonshot technology itself is phenomenal. To think back to when I got into engineering, and the first time I walked into a server room, the amount of space and the cooling and the power consumption. I mean, just in my office alone, just 8 servers in there. My accountant calls me up and says, your power is extremely expensive. In fact, I'll tell you this. I managed my first office I ever had, office space I ever had. This guy gave me free energy, free power. I thought to myself, well, this is great. Yeah. He has no clue what's walking in. So then I roll in my giant rack of servers, and I just kept putting another server in, because it didn't cost me a cent. And then one day I'm outside walking into the office. He said, "Hey, Doug. I was like, "Hey, guy, and you use a lot of power, don't you? And it costs money, and we don't think about that, but the businesses does, and that's one, another benefit, and not just to virtual desktops, but across the board, right? To all that infrastructure that the users need beyond the desktop.
All right.
Great technology.
Well, thank you, Doug. Giving us a lot of great answers. Once again, this is us reporting out from HP Discover and really putting the finesse on HDI.